Resi 4 is coming out on PS4, you know.
I think it's the last one to come out, isn't it?
It is, yeah. It's getting a
6 was the first. I did it backwards to build anticipation to the game that people actually wanted to play.
Hello and welcome to the RetroPerspective. This is the gaming talk show where we discuss the past and the present of the gaming industry. And today we're going to be doing part 3 of Resident Evil's Fall from Grace and how far it's fallen. Again, I'm joined by Aaron.
Hello.
And Josh.
Hi.
So we just played Resident Evil 6 for the first time ever.
And the last.
What did we think of it, guys?
I think Resident Evil 6 was
sensational, riveting, and a thoroughly enjoyable play. Are all words you will not hear to describe this game.
Absolutely not. That was me. Resident Evil 6, from the opening screen, which says Resident Evil and has a 6 displayed in jizz. That's when I knew this game would be total wank.
We decided to start off playing as Leon and Helena. And basically the very start of the game, the opening sequence, is really bad. First of all, we have to drag Helena through the alleyway, as he said, and that is basically holding a direction, but you don't have to hold forward, you can hold
Any
back.
direction.
You can hold any direction and Leon will just keep going forward with a preset animation.
Did you even have to press, is this the part where you had to press
Buttons
buttons for left hand, right hand? There will be enjoyment in pressing the wrong hand, and you're like, oh fuck, press wrong hand there. Oh, he's fallen to his death.
So I mean, a famous example of a scene we majorly criticised in a game was the microwave cutscene in Metal Gear Solid 4, where basically anything you do, despite it seeming like a frantic, hellacious moment towards the end of the game, basically anything you do will have a successful outcome at the end of it. Resident Evil 6 takes this one step further. As we were saying, you can literally hold backwards on the analog stick and your character will move forwards. There's literally no way to fail an incident that is forcing you to press anything to continue what is a cutscene essentially. Then it gets even worse, is you actually have to parts of the cutscene that we were mashing triangle because we were fucking dragging snakes, burning corpse through a microwave. I can understand why we were mashing a button. That's how you'd feel in a microwave. You'd be like, ah! You'd be like that trying to do it. But on this, we're literally pressing buttons to open a fucking door. Why have we got to press buttons to open a fucking door? It makes no sense. It's literally, he goes to open it with his right hand, then the game prompts you to press X. If we're literally having button presses to close a man's hand on the doorknob, on the knob of a fucking door, it's you might as well control every single movement in his body and have the right and left analog stick control his arms. Now, this happens in lots of games. It's certainly a feature of modern gaming, I would say.
Yeah. And
because a lot of films do it, where they start at the end and then you figure out, oh, how did it get to that place? That was such a cool area. I can't believe the world had turned to shit. I want to play the game to find out how it got so bad.
Well, I certainly won't say I dislike the idea of that.
It's certainly not a bad idea, no, of course not.
It can work very well.
It absolutely can. Yeah. But weirdly in this game, when you come to play that section in the future, it's actually completely different. Helena isn't hurt on the ground.
Yeah, for a start, we could play it 2-player the second time round we played. But not in the beginning.
Yeah, I think a lot of the issue with that as well is that it sets it up to be a sort of Metro Prime type setup to the game. So you go into it right at the start thinking, right, I've got absolutely everything. Yeah. This is to give me a taster of where I can end up.
But then it doesn't do that through the story. It just does it by saying, okay, now here's the actual beginning of the game.
And the thing is, you never really lose everything. You never actually really lose everything. At any point. You just have everything throughout the game. It's it's not easy enough that you can select infinite ammo at the start of the game.
I think you can actually.
Yeah, you can.
Well, that's what I mean. You can select that. Yeah. So I mean, that's not easy enough. Would you let you have all the weapons as well throughout the whole of the game?
You pretty much do for at least a large portion of the game.
Yeah, for a
vast
large
majority of the game.
Or certainly acquisition of the weapons is incredibly easy. It's just you find them so easily just throughout in a very linear path.
And there's no clever weapon placements as there was in other Resident Evil games. Yeah. They're just literally all on dead bodies that you just randomly come across. And because the game is so linear, you will probably, you
will come across them.
always
You will
come across them.
100%.
It's the reasoning that they have behind putting that particular section in the beginning of the game.
Well, yeah.
Because they wanted to be like, we're Resident Evil 6, we want to be Call of Duty now. We're going to give you the most epic part of the game right at the beginning.
It's very action-oriented.
This is what you're going to be in store for.
And it's very... And, you know, to say punching the boulder was utterly ridiculous in Resident Evil 5 and got a load of shit from the fan base, they decided to ignore all of those criticisms and decide to make a game even wackier with falling helicopters and cars that are literally blowing up left, right and centre.
That opening section.
Like fucking Matrix 2 when cars
flying
cars flying past you, literally.
It is insane, and
totally
you know, the game. You're definitely right. It does decide to open with a very high octane action sequence that's utterly ludicrous.
Resident Evil 4,
it is very in your face action.
By contrast, had a much more low-key opening in a lot of ways. A lot more typical to Resident Evil.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, there was definitely an atmosphere in that opening of Resident Evil 4. No atmosphere whatsoever in 6. You know, it felt very much like you just jumped into a Bourne film or something.
It's very big, yeah.
And when you start
very
off
big.
small like that, it means that when you do eventually ramp it up, it's got all the more impact. Whereas starting big like Resident Evil 6, it's not going to have any impact at all. And we just found it laughable, didn't we?
Oh, it was laughably bad. One of the worst openings to any game that I've ever
I think
played.
you're already switching off from the action when you're already playing huge sections of it. You're already switching off to everything that comes afterwards.
Yeah.
So when the game, you know, it's that the next section, which is the start of the game, has got a brooding feel to it. You're walking around this mansion and stuff like that, but it feels almost tedious in comparison to the all-out action that the game that preceded it. And that's frustrating because it should never feel that way. It should always be a break from the action as opposed to...
The thing is, the opening was... It felt like this is all the game can throw at me. And it was.
Yeah.
You know, you never had more than that really thrown at you throughout the game. You know, that were about as chaotic and crazy as it gets.
The funniest scene in the game, I think, was where Helena and Leon were slipping down this like water shaft for absolutely ages. Like they must have gone like 50 to 100 miles underground.
No wonder they got to fucking China. They probably slid all the way down
Through the centre of the earth.
right through the centre of Earth.
And after that, there's a bit of a section where you swim in and stuff like that.
This is all underneath a church.
And it's all
as well.
going down and down and down. And then suddenly you get out of this place and you're in a lake area, which is in the middle of a forest. Yet you've been going down underground for miles and miles. And then all of a sudden, it's just like, oh, we need to get on this plane. Oh, what?
It's become less and less of a focus. I felt 4 was still fairly plot focused, although, you know, it wasn't a particularly riveting plot.
You could actually understand what was happening.
Yeah.
Before.
Yeah, you could understand what was happening.
We had no clue what was going on in this game.
And it's been getting less and less throughout. 5 was less than 4, and 6, I mean, it's just a cop-out once again. It's a cop-out to not put the time and effort.
Yeah,
they were clearly rushing development of the game.
Lots of new characters of which no thought was put into them whatsoever.
Yeah, exactly.
Really churned out like proper cliche. We're talking Shiva on boring pills. Leon and Helena are kind of introduced together, and it's kind of a really quick scene in which a massive thing has happened where like the president is dead, and it's just all kind of done really quickly without explaining who that guy was, why everyone's there, why is everyone seeing him. It's just not particularly well built up or established, and this is after an already quite confusing opening where everything's blowing up and you're introduced to this character. Now, at least in Resident Evil 5, Shiva was a new character to the series, and it was a big deal that she was a new character to the series. And they had like...
And she introduced herself.
Yeah. Hello, I'm Shiva. I have no personality, but at least she introduced herself. These characters don't. Now, one of the main characters you play as is Jacob Mueller, despite his name spelt Muller, like a Muller corner. And, you know, the character, he's kind of like freed from a prison because he's special, and that they've come to kind of save him. But, you know, he's been fucking chilling out in this weird, like, compound, it seems. Like a prison-esque sort of thing. It seems like he's in.
I didn't even get that much.
I don't know. But he's chilling down somewhere. And you could have had some scenes early on. The opening cutscene could have been his army friends being like, or some army guy's been like, hey, have you seen that Jake Mueller over there? He's a real loner. I hear he's from Special Forces. Oh, I hear he did a stint in Black Ops. And, they're like all speculating about him. Add some mystery to the characters, so we're thinking this guy's mysterious. No, not even his friends know who he is. And kind of build it like that, and then Sherry comes in. And just take a little bit of time to have a little... And I'm not even talking the world. I'm really not. Just some really brief exposition for who this character is. Instead, she runs in and she's like, Jake Mueller, you have the antibodies. And he's like, well, it's gonna cost you. And it's like, and they're kind of like straight hitting some repartee, like right from the off. And it's just like...
Whilst the helicopter is flying around trying to shoot at them.
Now, I'm a Resident Evil. I've seen fucking Wesker's Report, guys. That was a DVD that explained the whole plot to Resident Evil. So I know my shit. I know what I'm talking about. I know everything there is to know about Resident Evil. And I was really confused by this whole introduction of a character. I didn't know what the fuck was going on. And I'm like a Resident Evil pro. Imagine if some fucking kid was like, Resident Evil 6 sounds fun, I'll play it. Resident Evil's scary. And you're playing this game for the first time. You'd be like, who the fuck are these guys? Who the fuck is Sherry? What the fuck is going on? I'm literally just started this game and it's like, Jake Mueller, you have the antibodies. Punch, kick, fucking punch.
They probably skipped the cutscene.
I hope they fucking did, because it's like...
The thing is, this lack of character development as well, it's not limited to the playable characters and the main sort of set of characters. Derek Simmons, the main sort of bad guy in the whole thing.
Seems like a pretty big bad guy.
He's not given... You're not given any real reason to hate this guy at all, really.
Apart from he's like the head of fucking CIA or some shit like that.
That's
but what it's actually known as, guys, is whisper this, because it's like Neo Umbrella. It's Umbrella, really, guys. It's Umbrella.
They just could not think of anything.
This is Japanese developers to a T at the moment. They're just sat in the studios going, shit, we used to be amazing. We used to be so good.
We are fucking stupid now. We can't make games. We
Chrono
don't know what to do.
Trigger, Final Fantasy, all we
Fuck
used to be
that
good.
shit. Metal Gear Solid, Silent Hill, fuck all that shit. We've got Derek fucking Simmons. Derek Simmons is coming to fuck your world up. He's the biggest villain of the fucking year. Kids are going to have posters of him on their fucking walls. And they'll be scared of him, but in fear of him, and they'll love him because he's such a badass.
So it's as if Capcom wanted to build up this bad guy character so much, as if he's this big villain, that they decided to bring him back so many times, and it just makes it absolutely ridiculous.
It's like the amount of times that Wesker was brought back and killed over the course of 25 video games, all in the space of a 6-hour chapter in one game. So Derek Simmons, he dies a lot, he comes back a lot. It's more false endings than Lord of the Rings, really. It is relentless with it. And it becomes a bit of a joke by the end. And I can't even remember how if I can finally kill him. I think he gets struck by lightning.
It's in a lava pit, in a volcano.
Oh, yeah, and you punch the boulder onto him. Yeah, definitely seems like that's what happens. There is a boss fight with a big fish monster. Now, I'm usually all for a big fight with a fish monster.
It's probably the worst QuickTime event in the game.
It's horrendous.
But there's a really poor, clunkily implemented QuickTime event with this big fish.
Yeah.
That really does not set up the fight very well.
For a start, you don't actually fight the fish. The fish literally grabs a hold of you when you're in the water, and it's just push this button in time, and you will stab the fish, and then that's it. That's the boss fight.
Yeah, you do. There is a section afterwards where you have to kind of shoot the fish and stuff like that, but it's not great.
Like you said, there are some decent QuickTime events, such as just generally when enemies grab a hold of you.
Yeah.
You have to do. There's a thing that spins around.
Sequences,
You have to hit it at a specific time. However, what I dislike about that is that it's always just on the screen, really big.
Yeah.
You need to do this now. Josh, you had the pleasure of playing the aeroplane section where you were driving an aeroplane whilst Aaron was defending him from zombies jumping from the ceiling into the plane. Somehow
just appearing from the roof of the aeroplane. They must have been there since takeoff. It's just what the hell is happening?
Just in the fucking luggage section. Bunch of zombies.
Do you want to tell us a bit about how you had to do that?
Yeah, so at the QuickTime event of the aeroplane, you're being defended by Helena. whilst you operate the controls, because Leon is a well-known aviation expert.
Very
And
famous.
Helena's a woman, so
And
she
Helena's
won't be
a
able
woman,
to
so she
drive
can't
anything.
drive anything,
I'm
obviously.
fucking useless behind the
Women
wheel of
drivers.
anything, yeah.
So
Fucking
anyway,
idiots.
we died multiple times actually on this quick time event.
You did.
Which
Sometimes my fault.
I guess
usually my
I guess
fault.
there's something for it, but yeah, as Aaron says, it weren't really the fault of doing the quick time wrong most of the time. It was just that Aaron is not very good at this kind of game.
Yeah, I'm not. I struggle. Struggle massively.
So we had the two main thrust levers, as we're going to call them, that you have on all planes, obviously. So we had to do a quick time event and press at certain times to sort of pull the aeroplane up so we didn't crash into a mountain, was it? If I remember correctly.
It's something
some kind of
fucking mad.
mountain.
No,
it
we're
was,
in China. We're in China.
Yeah, we were flying
crashing
over
into
China.
Crashing into
skyscrapers.
China.
The
yeah.
ironic thing about this quick time event is the plane crashes anyway. but if you don't
Crashes safely
if
when
you
we do
don't-
it.
Crashes safely
if
in,
you don't
in a
crash at that
district.
exact time,
It crashes
Crashes
safely in a
safely
heavily popularised in a district.
that
of
Leon
China.
happens to know like the back of his hand. He just oh yeah, we crashed it here, and that's exactly where we wanted to crash actually, because we're gonna go and meet up with these people now. Just a few blocks from here.
I'm pretty sure Jake and Sherry
turn up
immediately turn up.
Immediately
and
turn up on the
hey,
crash site.
Hey,
like
Leon.
Leon was planning to crash there all this time.
It worked.
Absolutely
It absolutely
fucking
worked a
ridiculous.
treat. Leon really is an expert when it comes to aviation.
Anyway, going back to the quick time event, absolutely terrible. So you have to operate some thrust controllers, some clunky sort of quick time movement, and then you have to look around the cockpit. So like, if you're looking in the wrong direction, you're gonna die kind of.
And that's
thing,
not
because
you
you're not
looking. That's you controlling Leon's
that's you
head.
controlling Leon's head. So you press up and then look up at these switches, right? Looks down here, looks down at the thrusters.
So
so
you can't
you've got to
even
look.
find
You've
it.
got to, if you can't find them, that's it, you folks. If you don't find them in time, so you just got to know, kind of thing. So you've got to die a few times basically to get through this event, which is frustrating because no event should really be like that. If you're good enough, you should be able to get through it, kind of thing. The only reason you die is you're not quick enough on the fingers.
And just to make that even worse, the zombies dropping from the ceiling, as we've said, Aaron didn't even know that they were appearing behind him, so he was blocking off this little area.
I was getting
and,
flanked.
and then realising that there was just zombies behind
You
him
wouldn't
anyway.
think. You wouldn't think I could have been flanked in a cockpit, but
Totally
I was.
ridiculous. There seems to
I
be only
was
one
flanked.
end that the zombies are coming from, but then suddenly they're dropping from the roof and all sorts of shit.
As we discovered, like, what was better than QuickTime events was when the game actually presented to you environmental stuff
Yeah.
to solve puzzles, like when we had to aim our lasers at those things, like
Yeah, that was-
we
that
had
was
to
quite-
get into
those were quite
specific
good sections.
positions and aim our lasers at the same time upwards and
Yeah.
into these things. And then there was another section where it had the passcode on above these doors, didn't it?
Yeah.
And then you had to kind of say, okay, that's the passcode, and it was almost as if Leon was telling Helena,
Yeah.
this is the passcode, kind of thing.
Yeah,
They were
'cause he
very
did,
much
yeah.
more
Like,
Resident
it's much
Evil
more
than-
clever to do it that
Yeah.
way rather than just saying, okay, push this button and you'll.
And definitely, one of the strongest things that Resident Evil 6 does, and this is in direct comparison with Resident Evil 5, is it does utilise the multiplayer aspect of the game significantly better than Resident Evil 5 did. Like, 5, a heavy criticism that we levied at 5 when we were reviewing it was that whilst the game is multiplayer, there aren't a lot of sections where the characters are separated. There aren't a lot of sections where one character's abilities, it's a benefit to be playing as Shiva, or it's very different to be playing as either character. The game, Resident Evil 5, basically plays like a single player with two characters. Whereas I think in Resident Evil 6 there are quite a lot of sections where one character is off doing one thing, and it's not always defense situations. There are other ones.
Yeah, different
Defense. I think it's a relatively easy thing to pull off in a co-op is the
Yeah.
defense situations, but there are a few where one character has to go and move some objects around. Really pretty simple stuff for a multiplayer.
Yeah.
But a significant improvement on what Resident Evil 5 was doing.
That one element of the game, the fact that we could play it together,
Yeah.
made it so much more enjoyable for me
Definitely,
personally than Resident Evil 5. If we could go back and do it again, I would rather play Resident Evil 6 than Resident Evil 5.
That's a bold statement, Ira, sir.
You disagree?
Yeah, I think we have different opinions in a lot of ways on this, because fundamentally, I don't like the direction the games have taken in becoming have to play as two-player game.
Yeah, well,
I fundamentally
don't
do not like that at all, because I think a lot of the aspects of what makes Resident Evil so good as a survival horror,
Absolutely.
survival horror being the key word, of which there is none nowadays, it seems. is that you're on your own. That's what makes it so scary. I mean, when we were younger, we would have friends round and we'd take it in turns playing single player Resident Evils, but it would still have that immense fear factor because you don't have anyone else to rely on in the game. It's all on you.
In the
and
game,
it's quite scary in that
it's
sense.
very isolated.
It gives it that isolated.
Very few characters in other Resident Evil games. Very few characters.
Yeah.
It's like it's a big moment whenever you run into anyone else.
Absolutely, and I feel like because of the direction where Resident Evils have gone, where you now multiplayer the whole game, you always have somebody else, both physically and in the game, to rely on. It's totally taken away from the horror factor of the games, which I feel they were already losing a lot anyway because of the way that they'd spun off from the original style of the game, being very difficult to manoeuvre, not having much ammo. All these things are things that have brought into the modern era, which it probably had to do, to be honest. And I think Resi 4, for instance, did it very well.
4 is so effective in our opinions.
Yeah.
We had a real laugh playing it, like we really did. I think we had a real good time playing
But
it.
if you were playing it on your own, though, this is my point.
If you're playing your own,
it's not going to be fun.
And the
If
only
you're playing your
reason-
own, I'd rather have a frigging root canal and play
Well,
this.
yeah, the only
Because it's not
reason it was
enjoyable.
good playing together, though, is just because we was laughing at it.
True.
It was
true.
hilarious how bad it was.
Yeah, I just think there's not a great many games out there that have that can do that kind of like fun multiplayer. I don't think there's a lot of games that can do it. Really, it's split screen in
Aaron,
someone's house, not online.
I think you're forgetting that we literally ran through a lot of the sections of the game. Aaron was just like, no, screw this, we're just running through this section.
Yeah, but that was effective strategy.
And he'd run away and I would follow him.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't get hit. No zombies would be
It was
trying
like
to get to us.
the
And you could literally do that. That's a viable thing you can do in the game.
They'd taken the concept of the old Resident Evils of you should run away from stuff more often than you should fight it a step too far in this
It
game.
is a step too far.
Running
You can
is my
literally
favourite
run
tactic.
through the whole game without shooting anything and without taking any damage.
All right,
We
that's
criticise-
exaggeration. It isn't literally that you can run through the whole game. There are large sections you can run through whilst not really fighting that many zombies.
Yeah.
Despite the game trying to be more, as Jake likes to constantly say, they're trying to be more like Call of Duty. The game decides to introduce a melee mechanic that must be the clunkiest piece of shit that's ever been introduced in a game ever.
There's more moves than Tekken, I'll tell you that. Because,
There weren't there? A corkscrew uppercut
all you have to
was
do...
simple compared to this shit.
All you have to do is constantly press R2 and you'll get through a massive amount of enemies in this game.
Oh,
and
totally.
there are no punches, there are only kicks. So the majority of characters will literally just be like, "Ha! Ah!"
And
and
then
like
You can
doing
kick your way through the whole
flying
game.
kicks
Its
and
melee
something.
attacks are
Spinning
so
kicks.
overpowered as well.
And
They are very
wrestling moves
powerful.
as well.
Yeah, I mean,
so many wrestling
not even-
moves.
It took an idea that was done so well in Resident Evil 4 in that what this were meant to do is reward good play.
Yeah, it
So in
was.
Resident Evil 4,
Absolutely, yes.
you shoot the kneecaps, you shoot the head, you get an opportunity to do more damage without wasting ammo. You play well and you get rewarded, which is a pretty basic concept in good games.
Yeah.
Good games do that because you can play on different levels then. Okay?
You're not just blasting wildly at things.
What this did is take a concept like that and say, actually, we're going to reward spammy anything play. You can just kick your way through the game. There's no sort of intuitive use of these mechanics. It is just literally, you can use melee attacks whenever you like, however you like, and they're so effective that you can kick your way through everything.
Now,
There's no context sensitive moves as well.
That's all right.
Absolutely.
Shooting the
yeah,
kneecap,
this
there's
is
none
right.
of that.
there are context-sensitive moves, Jake. You are wrong about that. For
Stop,
example,
stop.
we were playing the section with Jake and Sherry. Now, near the start of the section, there are lots of moments where zombies are literally stood like this, just head down. They're not looking. Some of them are kind of half-heartedly like, I don't know if they're looking for you. I don't think they're looking for you. I think they're his ex-teammates who've been turned into zombies. But they're just kind of stood around, and you can go up them, and you have ample time to press your melee button, and your character will do a flippy thing, and they'll go, "Whatcha!" and they'll do a flippy, like, flip over
Giant
head. and go,
Backwards
what's
spinning roundhouse kick.
and they'll fucking obliterate their faces until they're dead. So stealth moves are in this game, despite not having any aspect of
if you melee them from behind, you can
it's a
kill them
stealth move.
instantly.
So you can go around to the back of any zombie and do a stealth move.
like
on them.
Tekken.
We're forgetting that you can also dive on the floor and
yeah.
like crawl
Yeah,
around
so there's
on the
the characters
Crawl around
characters,
backwards.
which has no,
Like
it's
this.
no there's no purpose for it, is
And
there?
there's a section in the game where it appears that is what you have to do.
Yeah,
So you
there's
have to jump like this
stop.
onto your back and then crawl forward like this underneath some kind of like
Spinny
geared
blades.
spinning blade fence, and then shoot zombies as you're crawling forwards like this. And that is how you have to play the game. That is the proper way to move on through that section.
You have-
This is how ludicrous it is.
So-
Not crawling like a normal person, because you can't do that.
You might be
cannot
able
do
to.
that. So you can't crawl
you
like
can
a normal
only crawl on
person
your
and
back
pick
like
people
that.
off like this.
I've read some normality to this. I'm certain there must be a way to crawl on his stomach. However,
Comment below.
crawling on your back is a totally valid tactic, and it's physically impossible for someone to drag themselves whilst on their back using just their fucking feet. But we made it
Drag
possible.
themselves
We made it
forward as
possible.
well.
We
Dragging
made it possible in Resident Evil 6. You drag yourself forward. But yeah,
Oh,
the
dear.
game introduces crawling mechanics that are almost no time in the game are in any way useful. However, there are a few sections where you'd have to crawl through them. And because the animation for the crawl is so absolutely hilarious, it makes the section seem utterly ludicrous because characters physically a human would never move like that. They wouldn't move like that. So why did they introduce it? It's absolutely insane. And
Totally ludicrous.
this leads on to another point in the game, of which there were some incredibly questionable animations. They seem to have done a real good job with the melee, but there's an aspect of the game which I don't know if in single player it has more of an impact, where you can praise your partner. You can give them praise and let them know like that they're doing a good job. So the idea is that like Leon in the section we played has a selection of comments. So you can be like, "Oh, good job," or "Help me out, buddy," or something like that. Has some things you can say. And for some reason, the animation is so clunky that they just decided to animate the character's arm, not the rest of their body for the animations. So Leon will be stood normally, like with his gun, like this, and then he'll just be like, "Good job." And you're like, Turn 4. The arm just moves completely independent. It's not like Leon. It's not like Leon's like this, and then he just goes into like a relaxed state, and he's like, "Good job there," and like it's a fully like done animation for like the thank you sort of option. Instead, it's just the arm. The arm moves completely independent. It's just like it must be one of the clunkiest animations I've ever seen. And I'm talking about any Resident Evil game. You know, the animations were a lot slicker. In the early PlayStation games, you know, people weren't moving quite as robotically as that. And I'm guaranteed they probably used mocap for this, and they'll have had to hand draw that shit. It's like this is like fucking absolutely insane how bad the animation is there, and it's just it's just an aspect of pure lazy game making.
Yeah,
it's absolutely lazy. It looks atrocious.
We need to talk about all the production values in this game because they're all really bad.
They are bad.
I pointed out that one of the textures of like these weird leechy things was actually worse than the Ouroboros from Resident Evil 5.
Oh yeah, disgrace.
In what way is that acceptable?
All the characters, other than the main characters, looked like something off The Sims
they do.
1 or something.
They do look terrible.
They look awful.
They
look
really
awful.
bad textures, really bad character models.
And this might not be a problem necessarily in Resident Evil 4 or Resident Evil 5, when there are very few non-playable characters, or characters that aren't enemies who you play in the game. There's a very strange section in Resident Evil 6 very early on. Well, there are loads of characters that you're helping kind of protect these people in this city. And it feels very out of place for any other Resident Evil. It has a Left 4 Dead feel to it that's really unusual. And
there's a lot of aspects of the game actually.
Absolutely,
that I feel
yeah.
have a Left 4 Dead feel to it.
they do
to
a
be
little
honest.
bit.
Yeah,
And it's just
really
like that relationship feels so important. Special thanks to Valve for Left 4 Dead 2 content. What? The whole fucking game? Fucking hell. Special thanks for Valve for letting us just market their game as something that's slightly different. What a bag of shit.
I didn't renew it.
I'm fucking lunatic. I can't fucking believe that.
In Resident Evil 4 and 5, we had some pretty distinctive enemies, such as the Ganados.
Man
and
with
the
bag on his head.
Manginis.
With a chainsaw.
El Salvador.
Yeah, and basically varied up all the different enemy types. In this one, what I believed to be a boss pretty early on in the game, some sort of weird fat thing with like boobs that squirted venom or squirted poison.
The monstrous tit. It was the massive tits, yeah, the tits.
I believed it was like a sort of a semi-decent first boss or something.
I thought it was quite a good boss, yeah.
But then you discover that it's just a regular enemy.
You do fight it a couple more times.
You fight it a few more times.
You fight it a couple more times. Maybe not a regular enemy, but I do see what you're saying.
The next time, the next couple of times you fight it, it's just nowhere near as interesting as the first
it wasn't
time.
anything.
It's just like randomly throws it at you.
Didn't seem powerful, and yeah, it was a bit lame.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember a good boss fight. There's a character in the game who's like a nemesis-like figure. I believe he chases Jake and Sherry through most of their chapter, and you fight it with Leon and thinking it's like a collective effort to kill it.
It was like a tyrant.
It was like a big tyrant kind of boss, and there's like 4 people trying to kill it.
It has like a cage on its back.
It gets very chaotic,
and puts them in the cage.
Yeah, that's a cool concept, but it's not really executed particularly well in the fight. I didn't think. Like,
there should have been something around that, really.
Yeah, more like
maybe,
explosive,
especially around the team. Maybe one of you had to distract him and shoot him in the legs while the other runs round the back or
he's
something.
Freeze someone or something.
Does something with that.
Yeah, generally speaking, across the board, the enemies I found incredibly tedious to the point that the large majority of the game you're just fighting zombies over and over again. And there are a few
zombies
different
with
types.
guns as well as again.
Yeah.
But this time they're really inaccurate.
I think they're really clunkily implemented. I mean, Resident Evil 5, when the zombies had guns, it was a whole section where you had like covers and stuff. You had to come out and kind of shoot them and stuff. And it was like a whole big thing that they had guns, and they kind of built up to it enough.
Yeah.
It made kind of sense that they would get guns. I don't think guns necessarily to blame. I think we were playing the Jake and Sherry section, and characters had guns, but they were very, very up close to you. You could still melee the fuck out of them, and it was just a complete waste of time. So it's kind of like the gun aspect of it just wasn't particularly implemented. I'm sure there are probably sections where you have to shoot things, but
the base of the problem was really, as we've touched on, you could just run past these guys anyway.
And melee the fuck out
on the island, for instance, in Resident Evil 4, there's no point in there really where you could realistically just run past JJ or someone. You would get cut to fuck.
You absolutely can't.
You cannot do it.
One thing that Resident Evil 6 does get rid of completely from the previous Resident Evil games is the cash system, which you use to purchase and upgrade weapons. The RPG element for that is removed completely, and it's replaced by a fabulous system called skill points.
For a start, each separate character, we're playing as 2-player here again, you can only pick 3 skills. 3 skills
from a list of 300
from a list of hundreds of skills, and those 3 skills are applied to both characters. There's no way of picking and choosing between each character.
No sort of logical way of, maybe improving one thing with one character and then thinking, right, I'll improve this other thing with the other character for the benefit of the team kind of thing.
That's clever.
None of that. That would be clever.
Now, I would be quite certain in assuming that when you're playing online, you'd have one character and you could have 2 sets of skills.
Yeah.
I would imagine that would be plausible.
Probably.
Now, one thing, there's a lot of skills when we're kind of looking at them, and I'm sure some of them must have certain interesting outcomes in the game. I can't recall ever noticing a skill actually be like, oh my god, that died a lot easier thanks to my heavier damage skill. I never really realised. I never felt at all that any of the skills we picked seemed to have a big impact on the game.
A lot of the skills were quite similar. Like there was one that said more damage on zombies, and then there was another one that said more damage for your melee attacks on zombies, and it's just like, well, what does the general damage one do? Does that not affect melee
Was that like
attacks?
a 1.25 and melee's double the damage?
Yeah, like,
and also it's like one was like more damage on enemies, and one was more damage on zombies. It was like the wordings were all really...
they're all kind of similar.
When you finish the end of a level, so you've got your grade in the top corners somewhere, and then you've got this ridiculously long list of different things that you did during that chapter and how well you did on
medals.
each one, with all kinds of multicoloured medals dotted all over the place, and sort of like rewards like
successfully inputted commands at the exact moment.
I successfully input commands at the exact moment all the time.
Successfully inputted commands at the exact moment. What are all these these symbols as well? Why is there like
killed
a
an
line
enemy
of
in
green
mid-jump.
coins on the outside and then a line of multicoloured coins and then these huge coins? What does it all mean?
All these coins
What does it
also,
all
why
mean?
is one of the coins? Why is like the colours should have been like bronze, silver, gold? Surely.
Green.
Why is green one of the colours?
Bronze.
It's like rusted, proper rusted copper.
We didn't. The green is worse than bronze. We only successfully input commands at the exact moment quite well.
Well, if you get-
we didn't do it bronze, silver, or gold well. We only did it green.
It wasn't the exact. It wasn't the exact moment.
It wasn't the exact moment,
It was
even
the
though we
mere
did it at
close
the exact moment. It wasn't quite as exact as possible. You had to scroll down all this list, and
It's
it
a
wasn't
huge
really
list.
apparent what sort of impact any of this had on sort of like how well you did or
Didn't give
what
you, like,
you
how
got.
many skill
It didn't
points
tell
you
you
did.
like what you got for each one, or it wasn't clear at all what was going on in that whole screen.
It's messy. It looks horrible. The medal
horrible.
graphics were really poor.
Oh, horrible.
It was like, you could have easily had little clearly separated things, but all the medals run into each other, and
totally
it just
horrible,
looks. It's
yeah.
a mess
It
of a
was
screen.
absolutely horrible.
It is
I
awful.
don't think we got any reward for any of the achievements.
Probably not. The UI is absolutely appalling. It really is horrendous.
In terms of how it
the
looks,
worst.
but also in terms of how it feels to move
Yeah.
around.
Oh,
in the menu.
horrendous to manoeuvre around.
So basically,
never-
let's talk about the way herbs work for a start. We can,
Herbs and first aid sprays. It all seems to work differently for some reason.
Yeah.
They are different.
well, let's start with the herbs. So we can mix herbs, but when you mix a herb, you can't just use it straight away. What you have to do is put it into your briefcase or something.
Pill case, I
Yeah.
guess.
So
Tablet
mixed.
splitter.
You've mixed it.
You can't
as
swallow tablets.
It looks just like a normal mixed herb, yeah? Then somehow, we don't see this actually happen, but when you press to put it into your case, it turns into a pill, and then a double mixed herb can have like 4 or 5 pills or something.
Yeah, so you
Then you tap R1 and each pill gains you 1 block of life.
Yeah,
So
and
you
it's like,
pop in
quick,
pills
like,
like
pop,
that.
Yeah,
Every-
pop in
every-
pills
and every time
as
you-
fast as you possibly can.
That's your main way of restoring health. However, there are first aid sprays in the game which inexplicably work completely differently.
no reason.
I can't even remember exactly how you use
You have
them,
to
but
equip
it's-
the first aid spray if it's a
Yeah.
weapon.
As if it's a
As if it's a
yeah.
weapon.
And then
yeah, and then
spray
use
it, and then but if the other characters in the vicinity of when you spray it, you can heal both of you. Now,
Totally
there's a few different things we need to explain in terms of how all this works and how they've envisioned it. So instead of having health bin from fine, caution, danger, which is the classic Resident Evil health system, in this your health is fixed from the start. There is no way to increase it beyond like I believe it's like 10 maybe, let's say.
No, it's 5 squares.
It's 5 squares.
5 squares, yeah. Okay, so you have squares of health.
Very small squares.
5 small
They're very
white
difficult to
squares.
see.
Now, these are on a UI in which it does not say health anywhere next to any of them. As we were playing it, we had to try and figure out which parts of the screen meant that.
Totally.
Because you
There's
also
there's
have
another
5
bar
squares.
Stamina
just
very
below it.
close.
You
as
also
well,
have stamina.
yeah.
And that could be a health as far as we were
Absolutely,
concerned.
you have a
confusing.
stamina bar that is identical except smaller blocks of health, smaller white
of
squares,
stamina.
smaller white squares. But either one could have been either one. It's not entirely clear. You also then have a number that's just arbitrary, often on 0, which is the amount of pills you have available to you. It doesn't say that that's the case at all. To go from one screen. And this is all in real time, so the pause screen doesn't stop the game from playing. You are still being attacked. So if you're trying to heal, you have to go to one screen, quickly combine things together, then get to another screen that's back outside of that screen, which was still playing at real time all the time, and then press a completely separate button to press the heal button, basically, that's specifically for healing when you have the healing stuff available to you. If that's not the clunkiest system I've ever heard of in my life. I mean, honest to God, Resident Evil Outbreak was less clunky when you're trying to heal yourself.
Yeah.
And that had a basic menu where you had to go into it and, that menu was a piece of shit itself. But this is beyond awful. We really are talking about a game-breaking mechanic here. I think it's the
terrible,
absolute worst thing in this game by a mile.
Yeah.
Is how clunky that system is. It's so bad.
And the thing is that this is another example, really, of an idea that's not inherently bad. If this would have been quite smooth, and you could have sort of mixed herbs maybe in a pause screen situation, had things there, But in terms of healing, you had to do it live.
You just press that.
You just press a button or something. You know, it's very obvious how to do it, not clunky at all. That's absolutely fine.
Kind of like how it works in The Last of Us, where you make the healing things and then you kind of have to get away from the action, and it takes a while for it to heal you all the way around.
Yeah, exactly. So you have some sort of delay where maybe just even the animation of spraying a first aid spray, 1 or 2 seconds.
Herbs are one section. Ammo. You can't really access or do anything with, apart from to give it to another player, I suppose. And then other herbs can be located on different sides that you could have quickly picked up. It's just not intuitive at all. You couldn't there's no way for you to have quickly organised it to make it more effective for yourself whenever you go into combat situations. There's no way for you to make it. It's just completely unintuitive how that system works.
Well, the whole idea of having an inventory anyway that's not limited is just a huge step backwards for the games, in my opinion. Resident Evil 4 got it absolutely perfect down to a T, the inventory system. So well paced throughout the game. The whole idea of having a limited space works so perfectly for a Resident Evil game. Always has done. Yeah, in the older games sometimes we were a bit too limited, but 4 did it perfect. I mean, it's not only unlimited, seemingly, it's incredibly clunky, as Aaron's already explained.
With a few tiny changes they could have made it work fine. That's the bad thing about it.
But they're not even...
Again, it's just laziness.
They're not complex changes, and it's not even I'm just like, I want 4's inventory back. I was like, do. I do want 4's inventory back. This is shit. But at the same time, it's kind of like, it's easy to look at what they tried to do and think this is still awful.
Yeah.
And it's so simple on how to change it.
Executed poorly.
You know, it's so frustrating to see a game not only be going in a terrible direction, like Josh is saying, the game is going in a bad direction. You know, you could argue 4 was a step in the wrong direction. If you're looking at just purely survival horror games, 4's a million miles away from Resident Evil 1 and remake. And you know, it's a considerable way away from Resident Evil Code Veronica.
But it was a step away, well executed.
But it was a step away, so well executed, and it really is a difference, because a good game will always be a good game, a good game that's well made. And this is what 4 really is, and this is why 5 and 6 are this fall from grace, as Jake has so eloquently titled this whole series of reviews. It's because 4 is Resident Evil completely changing itself. It was changing as a concept, and they really decided to go completely crazy.
My score out of 10 would be a 3 out of 10 if we were to play it single player. Maybe a 5 out of 10 for the multiplayer experience. Couch co-op, not online.
I would say, yeah, certainly I had a lot of fun playing it on a sofa with my friends. And I think you could too. If you're watching this and you're thinking, you know what, I've got some people coming round, we're big Resident Evil fans, I've been feeling really negative about Resident Evil 6 based on everything I've read, but you're looking for like a multiplayer experience, maybe like you're looking to play it, definitely play it with some friends. I absolutely would not recommend playing this as a single player because the storyline is so weak and the core gameplay is so poor. But as a multiplayer experience, I did have a lot of fun with it. So I really do have to favourably give the game a strong 5 out of 10.
As a single player game playing by myself, for me, this is a 1 or a 2 out of 10. For the simple reason that there's too many fundamental issues with it that I just can't get past, to be quite honest. And the fact that I would have no intention whatsoever of even playing another minute of the game by myself, how can I possibly grade it any higher than a 1 or a 2, you know, because I have no intention whatsoever of playing another minute of this game by myself. It's that bad. I do agree with the guys though. From a multiplayer perspective, playing with your friends, you know, on the same console at the same time, it did have a big enjoyment factor in a lot of ways, you know, mainly laughing at the game, to be quite honest. But we had a good laugh, you know, and in that sense I would give it a 5 out of 10. So my overall score for the game would be a measly 3 out of 10.
You said 2 out of 10 a second ago.
Overall. So it's a 1 or a 2 from a single player perspective, but playing together, you know, I would give it a 5 out of 10. So overall it would be
I think it's important that for all of our scores, you must imagine them written in crystallised jizz.